right? Government tells us that the distinguishing factors between people who are seriously impoverished and the rest of the population is an institutional lack of education, lack of access to opportunities, lack of understanding that they can do the same things that other people can if given a chance to do so. And they tell us that the solution is slavery. We in opposition believe the solution is to improve these things through investment, through awareness, by spreading the idea that these people can have access to opportunities that right now they don't know precisely because of the institutional factors they talk about, right? We want to create the belief that it's not your fault that you're in this situation, but that your society isn't just letting you throw your life away in order to achieve a benefit that they made you go for. And here's where I want to talk about this one idea of self-defense. We hear from open government that the state lets you defend yourself against a threat when the police isn't there. In this case, the state created the threat in the first place. That is why this is a distinguished thing from self-defense. It's precisely because the reason for why you have to react to this in the first place is the fault of the state, and it has not made a meaningful attempt in order to be able to make a meaningful choice to get out of it. There are three questions of crystallization for this round. First, does the state have a right to do this? Second, will this improve the lives of these impoverished people? And third, will this alleviate poverty in the long term? I think a decisive answer to all of these questions is no. On the first question, does the state have a right to do this? Here, I want to clarify what seems to be the biggest clash in this round. The difference between low-wage jobs and enslavement. And as Andrew very accurately, and I think beautifully points out, that difference is autonomy. But more specifically, the inability of these marginalized people to know the value of their own autonomy, especially in the way that other members of society might have a chance to do. And what do I mean by this? As Andrew tells you, what the state has done in allowing these people to be born into these conditions, and it's not necessarily the state wanting them to be born into conditions of poverty, they just happen by virtue of something like the birth lottery to be born into these conditions, right? It deprives them of the opportunity, not just for employment, not just for education, but the basic ability to develop a meaningful and equal conception of their own self-worth, right? This is something that's systematic. Every single day, they are confronted with hundreds of examples of their inability to access the same opportunities as other members of society. We even hear the idea echoed throughout the government bench that money is what matters for determining your value. They even tell us that rich people should be able to contract themselves away, if it in fact is a meaningful thing that they want to do to get money. These people don't have that opportunity. These people exist in a world where every single day they are told by society, you cannot do more, and you never will. In the long term, and this is the real psychology of this round, it's the inability of believing that the state can actually change the conditions that make your life terrible, right? It's the feeling of disenfranchisement, and it's the lack of any motivation for you to actually go out and try to create a positive change in your life, as opposed to selling your life away because you're forced to do that by your conditions. That is what brings these people to the conclusion that they are already slaves long before the policy the government has created comes into effect. This is important, extraordinarily, for three very good reasons. First, that in this case, consent for all intents and purposes cannot be made. Because what you're trading away isn't just your time, isn't just your effort. It is your autonomy, your ability to make choices as a human being on equal footing with other members of society. Even if this thing isn't as hugely valuable or as lowly valuable as people in this round seem to want to make it out to be, we know for sure that they don't understand its value because they've been conditioned to believe that they don't have it at all in every step of their lives. That's why they don't know what it means for them to give themselves up into slavery. And as someone that creates the conditions and maintains the conditions for them to survive, the state has a proactive obligation not to let them consent into this kind of situation. I'll take back.
So we all agree this is a highly racially stratified society that can't afford a social safety net where these people have no economic options. On your side, where does the impetus for social change come from, and where does the
impetus for social change comes from every single thing I said at the beginning of this speech. If you want to get money, you can ask for aid. You can shift money away from other programs, maybe military programs, maybe programs that have nothing to do with poor people, maybe other aspects of society that are less necessary. Your obligation is first and foremost to these people. This is an excuse. It is not a reason for you to not take every other action possible to get them out of that situation. That is not a rationale for enslaving people.
point of information.
So, they can't consent into it. But what else? Slavery exacerbates all these problems because it literally relegates them to a second class of human beings. It tells them that the only way you do have value is if you make yourself into an object for some period of time. And that is precisely the psychology that makes people in the long term believe they're incapable of being anything other than a valuable object for other human beings. We believe that that's the kind of thing that leads people to not have the motivation and the impetus to go out and try to create value for themselves, to try to find opportunities even when it's difficult for them to do so, right? The stuff that lets poverty continue as it is right now, that's extraordinarily important. Moreover, Andrew's POI matters a lot here, right? The idea here that we basically here conceded is that all people can do this, as long as it is reasonably justifiable, as long as you can make the calculation on your own. They're literally justifying all slavery as long as you decide that you can do that and you want the money. That is why this is a patently absurd position. It is because that's the exact mentality that in the long term leads to things, not just social stratification, but the idea that eventually you can start mistreating people as long as they decide that they're willing to pay money for that to happen. You can decide that these violations of their dignity actually are okay for us to allow as long as they believe that they can pay away for the state or for other individuals to hurt them. That's what leads poverty to be entrenched in a way that other people disregard these people because they don't view them in the same financial rights. The state does not have a right to do this. Second, we'll listen to the lives of impoverished people. And here I'm going to talk about the psychology issue, right? We're teaching the future generation of these impoverished individuals that you are only valuable, and that you're only able to maintain your value if you give yourself your ability to make choices up to other people. That's important. Because in the long term, the way you actually change these societies is by empowering them, not just by telling them that in fact they should, in the same level of humanity as everyone else in society, try to work forward and try to move past these issues. But it tells other people in society that these people are equal to you, even if they don't have the same amount of money as you. We'll tell you that the narrative for why all these things exist in the first place is because other people believe that it's their fault that they're in that position, that they haven't worked through the system to get as much money from it as possible, and when that's the case, you never have any positive change.
9 minutes.
1 minute left.
Zach, can you tell the other panel they have 45 minutes?
I'm going to handle something else right now.
Sorry? How long?
Wait, why do you have 45 minutes?